in this concept, the place in which tech companies are based, such as the United States, have a disproportionate influence over how the technologies are used abroad. We see this clearly in the Israel-Palestine case, in terms of Facebook's relationship with Israel, which appears to be stronger. So there's understandable accusations that Facebook are siding with Israel in terms of content takedowns. So what we see here is a clear kind of reflection, I suppose, of what we see as generally Western policy, or particularly US policy towards Israel-Palestine, manifesting itself through technology. Just as, for example, the US sell arms to or give military aid to Israel, the technology platforms that are created in the US are also facilitating this kind of digital colonization, this digital occupation. They're allowing the Israelis to disproportionately get their propaganda out there and get their disinformation out there. Firstly, what's important to realize before we go ahead is that actually you look at the majority of Americans in terms of public opinion, the majority of content analyzed on social media about Israel-Palestine was the fact that more and more people appear to be supporting Palestinians, right? So what this means is, in order to try and sustain this kind of Israeli propaganda, in the face of increasing public sympathy to Palestinians, the Israelis have to try harder to try and get their message out there. And of course, this means the use of Hasbara, this means the use of propaganda, this means the use of fake news. I mean, there was plenty of examples in the recent attack on Gaza of Israeli disinformation. And most of this disinformation was doing a specific thing. It was trying to portray Palestinians as violent. It was trying to say that Hamas were always using Palestinians as human shields in order to try and legitimize attacks against the Palestinians. Dima Khatib at AJ Plus was noting how so much of the content that they were doing about Palestine had the restriction warning. So that's when Instagram blurs out the image, so you can't really see it, and that impacts on who can see the story. And she says this happened a lot with regards to Palestinian stories or stories documenting Palestinian cases. We all have to do everything we can on social media. We have to share good, truthful, accurate content that documents the suffering of the Palestinian people and the human rights abuses by the Israeli authorities. If we're not in Palestine, that's our job at the very least, to get the message out. Because what Israel tried to do is try to control the narrative of the occupation. By using social media to document the Palestinian side, we then can try and control the narrative. I think for me, it's very simple. We can't debate in clear-cut cases of human suffering and injustice. What we see is an occupation, an apartheid state, a state in which one group of people is so powerful that they impinge upon the rights of the others and cause them harm and irreparable harm, killing, death, and suffering. So I think, again, there's that classic saying, you can't be indifferent in situations of oppression, because then you're taking the side of the oppressor. That's what it comes down to. If there's no neutrality here, in the sense that there is an oppressor and an oppressed, and that has played out legally, and that's played out on the ground, and we can see that every day. So I think debating or supporting the occupation is simply, you can do it, but it's not a moral position.